It's the 5th of April 2024. Time now is about 9:50. I'm at Tuas Link MRT station. The time now is 11:20 in the morning and I've just arrived at Forest City. The concept of ghost city, abandoned construction projects or Lan Wei Lo is not unique to China. In fact, China has exported this concept to Malaysia, more precisely to Johor, Iskandar Puteri here in Johor, and this is Forest City. Many people are talking about it. Some people don't want to talk about it. And the most famous Singaporean inhabitant here is probably former presidential candidate Mr. Tan Kin Lian, who is very proud and positive about his ownership of a unit here at Forest City. Now, to be fair, certain parts of this city, this mega project, when viewed from a distance, does not really merit the description of a ghost town. You can see a mini-mart here that is still operating, and there are some eateries here. I'm not sure if you can call them restaurants, but some eateries here which are still operating. There's a shuttle bus service, and the plants that are hanging out from this building here, the plants there, they are still alive. So this city, this project here, this development is still being maintained. So it's not that bad, not exactly a ghost city like those that we see in China, but many people are trying to bail out, and they of course have good reason to do that. I'll talk a bit about my journey here. The least comfortable part has to be the wait for this bus, this Forest City bus. All right, waited almost an hour for it. And of course, the passage from Tuas Link to Malaysian immigration was very smooth. I was the only guy on the bus, and of course there wasn't much of a queue at immigration as well. So that part was very smooth. The only part that required a very long and uncomfortable wait was at the bus terminal at Malaysian immigration. lift looked a bit dodgy. I thought I was going to get trapped inside. It's locked. Okay, no singing today. Wow, the toilet looks creepy as well. Alright, this is a hotel, some very upmarket accommodation at Forest City. I don't think I want to stay here, but let's check it out. Looks very nice. Just a little bit deserted. I think there's a restaurant here as well. Let's check it out. Ah, there's a Bruce Lee statue there. Meishan Forest City, Meishan 森林城市. Looks very atas, but not a single soul inside. Alright, this place, 疯狂烧烤, is highly recommended on Google. Let's check it out. Okay, normally I don't take lunch, but I'll make an exception today. This place has got very good reviews on Google, so I'm going to check it out. Let me try this fish, I think. 给我来个疯狂烤鱼，有吗？有，有，好，用那个疯狂。一个鱼就够了。对了，哎，来了，要怎么玩？哦，好的。可以了，看这鱼有多疯狂。The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Forest City was originally touted as an eco-city, sustainable development. So you see all those plants hanging out from the balconies. I don't know how many of them actually occupied. Not many, I suppose. But still, they managed to keep all the plants there alive. Great effort. This development was touted to mainland Chinese people, many of them living in polluted cities. So this seafront environment, along with all these greenery, is supposed to be a great attraction to them. That's why initially it sold so well. We've got an empty restaurant here by the beach. It's operating, but nobody is patronizing. The beach here is quite nice and peaceful actually. And right across the streets is Tuas. Not a bad idea to spend a day here if you are not into shopping. The water is not crystal clear, but it's quite clean. The beach has hardly any rubbish, no crowds. It's actually quite wonderful. And this is the famous stairway to heaven. Let's climb it. It gets narrower and narrower as you reach the top. Doesn't shake actually, so it's quite alright. Too small for both my feet. Anyway, let's go down. After a day spent exploring Forest City, I must say that this development is actually quite beautifully designed. The facades of the buildings are draped in greenery. The showrooms boast ultra-modern interior design with high-tech features. An impressive 3D model of this mega project sits inside the opulent sales gallery. Elsewhere, about 80% of the shop spaces are either vacated or never occupied. Floor tiles are buckling here and there, but workers are seen attending to these issues. The management has not only been trying its level best to maintain the development, they are also making a valiant effort to promote sales. Of course, we can't tell for how long their efforts can be sustained. Nevertheless, the beach is pretty nice, and it may not be fair to call this a ghost city, even though I can imagine how spooky this place must look at night. I wouldn't want to stay here, definitely not in its current state. As with things in China, drastic changes can take place overnight. I remember some years ago when the city of Chengdu opened an underground shopping complex, Di Dadao, with exits surfacing at various landmarks in the city. It is a massive labyrinth covering an area of 35,000 square meters. Back in the 1990s, when it was first constructed, shops here were already worth more than 10,000 yuan per square meter. When I was there in 2014, the place was still booming. Just 2 years later, when I visited again, most of the sections have already been deserted. Today's Di Dadao is almost completely deserted. Chengdu residents now use it as an underpass. Interestingly, many Chinese people think that this is perfectly normal. The abandonment of old properties is seen as a sign of society's progress and has nothing to do with the economy. Well, it may not have anything to do with the economy as a whole, but it definitely has something to do with changes in government policy, as in the case of Forest City. Now, it should be noted that back in 2006, the Forest City project was first announced as part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. It was a joint venture between Country Garden, a developer based in Foshan, Guangdong province, and Esplanade Danga, a Johor government-owned company. The former holds 60% and the latter holds 40% of the stake in a project which is worth a total of $100 billion. And make no mistake, it had the complete support of the Chinese government back then. Construction began in 2014 and it was launched to great fanfare. Former Prime Minister Najib Razak was there, the Sultan of Johor was there.
Projek Forest City yang dijalankan oleh Country Garden Pacific Views Senan Berhad ini adalah selaras dengan 6 teras strategik rancangan Malaysia ke-11. Saya dengan sukacitanya mengumumkan satu projek insentif sokongan yang diluluskan oleh Kerajaan Pusat seperti berikut. Pertama, kelulusan diberikan kepada kawasan Forest City ini sebagai status kawasan bebas cukai ataupun duty free area status untuk memacu aktiviti perniagaan dan
Units were priced at 1,200 ringgit per square foot. The smallest units went for 900,000 ringgit. Now, the concept of an ecocity, like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, attracted many buyers from China, and that's where it was aggressively marketed. Unfortunately, there was a stock market crash in China in 2015, and the government started changing its priorities. After repeated intervention failed to lift markets in China, the government in 2016 pushed forward a drastic currency control measure which restricts the amount of money any Chinese national can spend outside the country to $50,000 a year. Chinese buyers were immediately affected. They couldn't pay up the balance. Sales plummeted. It didn't help that the newly elected Malaysian government back then was not in favor of embracing the Belt and Road concept.
Tak kira lah Forest City. Saya harap Forest City itu akan betul-betul jadi forest. Penduduknya akan terdiri daripada kera dan monyet dan sebagainya.
Of course, there is a purpose behind this drastic move by the Chinese government, which threw many Chinese investors of foreign properties under the bus, even though it was supposed to be a Belt and Road project. Chinese markets were lifted from the doldrums by this policy. By 2018, developers like Evergrande and Country Garden saw their share prices rising exponentially. Meanwhile, Forest City was practically abandoned, while Chinese developers focused on captive buyers in China. Not satisfied with gains, greedy developers stepped up the pace, borrowing to the hilt, and went on building like there's no tomorrow. Everything came crashing down in 2020. Country Garden is now on the brink of bankruptcy, and even though some people blame Mahathir, potential Chinese buyers now see the project as a cold dish that had been reheated. Not appetizing at all. Time for Plan B. Another new government in Malaysia was formed in 2022. It announced last year that they have designated the Forest City project as a special financial zone to spur the economy. Prime Minister Anwar promised multiple entry visas, fast-track entry for those working in Singapore, and a flat income tax rate of 15% for knowledge workers. He was hoping that schools, hospitals, and IT industries experiencing high costs in Singapore could relocate to Forest City. What are the chances of success? Tell me what you think.